Dark midnight was my cry. We are in the midst of African American History Month. I always have mixed feelings about that because there is so much history throughout our country that belongs to our black brothers and sisters, not only in the church, but in this country and in the world. I feel a little like Morgan Freeman, a little different about just giving a month, because it could feel like tokenism. It could feel like, here, we gave you your month, but here in the Seventh-day Adventist movement, black history is one and a part of the Seventh-day Adventist movement. But still, we wanted to this month have different songs that reflect, and the one you just sang with us, Give Me Jesus, is an African American spiritual that the Seventh-day Adventist Church sang often in its formation days. See, our movement was founded during the Civil War crisis. And I talked about a little bit earlier, George Washington, it being his 288th birthday. And the fact that this nation right now is at 2020 and at the crossroads where it feels to some people like we're at a more divided time than we've ever been in our lives. And so there are many different solutions to that. And one of the proposed solutions is, because people like George Washington were not perfect, because people like Thomas Jefferson were not perfect, because our founding fathers in our country were not perfect, let's throw the whole thing out. Let's break the chains of history and set ourselves free. Sounds good. And in our churches, I hear this a lot. Well, you know what? I don't need to go to a building. I don't need to go where there's people. It's full of a bunch of hypocrites anyways. I am set free. For me, church is just me and my God over here, me and my God over there, and it sounds liberating and it sounds freeing. But I want you to hear a first-person account. This was a guy, the person speaking here today. I was raised in a household where it was a military family. We moved all of the time. I've mentioned in 13 years of schools, I went to 14 different schools, and there was law and order in the house. My stepfather was a drill instructor with the United States Marine Corps. And I always heard that with the United States Marine Corps, your job was to break down a person to the ground and build them back up. Well, I can tell you in our household as children, my brothers and I, we got the break down to the ground part. Never quite got the feeling of being built up. And so I'm going to show you a picture of back in the day. It's a little embarrassing, but that's okay. This is me, my freshman year. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And I'm here to tell you that young boy, 14 years old at the time, in that household where it was so strict and so many rules, all of a sudden liberation had come to the household. My mom and my stepfather, who had been married for a long time, since I was a little boy, they were getting a divorce. We look at our kids today and we wonder, what's wrong with them? Why are they making such poor choices? Well, when love and relationships are flavor of the month, when there's so many changes, so many things topsy-turvy, how do we expect our kids to have the feeling of stability? And I'm not standing up here as somebody who's self-righteous. I've gone through the pain of separation myself as an adult. But I will tell you this, that those chains finally came off. I can remember at 14 years old, this kid looking up and saying, if there is a God, please Help my mom and my stepdad to get a divorce. I am tired of the fighting. And when the divorce happened, I expected, wow, freedom. You ever seen the movie Ricky Bobby, where the kids scream, "Yay, 2 Christmases"? Sounds fun, sounds liberating. Until that first weekend, when somebody new was coming to my doorstep. Who's this person? And the fantasy came for the weekend when I'd get to spend it with my stepdad, who by that time had adopted me. I'm like, my stepdad and I, we're going to be together. I'm going to finally get him one-on-one, guy time. No more fighting between he and my mom. This is going to be awesome. And I went and he picked me up, and I'll never forget, he took me to a Pizza Hut down on El Cajon Boulevard in San Diego. And I said to him, I can't wait to see your new apartment, trying to be positive in all this change. And he said, yeah, well, about that. I said, what? He said, well, we'll get to that in a little bit. He said, I'm in transition right now. By the way, we're going to go pick up a friend, he said, on the way to where we're staying tonight. And that's when the red flag started to come up in my mind. And we went and 3 miles down the road to a local bar. And I'll never forget, this stranger came out of the bar. I'll never forget her name. Her name was Marcy. And I was asked to get out of the car, and Marcy came up, this stranger I never knew, kissed me on the cheek with the smell of alcohol, said, oh, I can't wait for us to get to know each other better. And my stepfather said, I'd like to introduce you to my new girlfriend. We're going to be going over and staying for a few minutes at her place tonight. Now, I'm telling you this because this is not therapy time. I'm telling you this because of the world we live in. We're at the crossroads where we're telling our kids and telling young people, listen, throw off the chains of these restrictions that community is putting on you, these restrictions that church is putting on you, and the government's going to come in and it's going to set you free. This is an old idea. And so I went to that house, Marcy's house. I'll never forget, I was sitting on the couch feeling strange. This was not what I had in mind. And the blankets came out and the pillows came out, and I was informed I'd be spending the night on the couch of a stranger's house I didn't know. Folks, if you want to know why our children struggle so much, it's some of this chaos in our society. I can remember at Hoover High School in San Diego, teachers frustrated, they would bring in this student into my office and just throw him into my office and say, you deal with him, I'm tired of dealing with him. Young African-American kid who was struggling, nobody could get through to him. Wouldn't turn in homework, wouldn't show up on time. And I mentioned earlier, San Diego, El Cajon Boulevard, from where my stepfather had taken me to lunch. My high school that I worked at, San Diego, El Cajon Boulevard. Notorious for prostitution. And this young 15-year-old boy who couldn't concentrate in school, we finally took a look outside when he was picked up by his mom, and we realized he was walking home with her, but walking home about 50 feet behind her. And sometimes cars would pull over and talk to mom, and sometimes cars would pull over and pick up mom. And this young boy was trying to survive. A society that said, break free from the chains of all these things like community and church and institution and guidelines. Break free from it. You're free. I can tell you firsthand, there was absolutely zero freedom in that. Folks, that's the bad news. You ready for some good news? The good news is, in the beginning, it ain't about me. In the beginning, it ain't about you. In the beginning, it's all about God. If you want to find meaning in your life and purpose in your life, it has to start with God. And so today we dive into Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, and it says this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. I want to go back to verse 1, actually, Kyle, if you could. It says this, in the beginning, God, the most important first four words, and He created everything. And it tells us that there was darkness, but the Spirit was hovering over the face of the waters. And if you've ever seen me preach at a funeral, you will hear me say, whenever there's water and there is Spirit, there is creation on the way. So today, if there's been water in your life, tears in your life, hopelessness in your life, if you are open to the Spirit, I'm here to tell you, creation and recreation is on the way for you. If you are truly open to the one who started it all. Verse 3 and 4 goes on and says this. Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. Now I want to point out this to you. When I read this, it was like a light went on inside of me. There was darkness all around. I'm here to tell you, there's nothing scarier than being 14 years old and realizing you have to parent yourself. But then I realized that wasn't true. I didn't have to parent myself. That there was a heavenly Father who had created me, and there was a purpose for me, and I started to get the taste. So what I am sharing with you right now is my first week of getting to know Jesus Christ in my entire life. Kyle, if you can go back to the picture of Paradise Valley. Kyle has been very patient with me as I've been over the map. This was the church that this young boy was lost and didn't know where he was going. And some of you heard the story before. My grandmother called me out of nowhere when I was going through all this commotion, all this change. And she said, Darren, there is an old-time preacher from Oklahoma. And he is here and he is doing a Revelation seminar. And I said, Grandma, normally that sounds like the most boring thing in the world, but you got me for one night. And I hung up the phone, and she came and picked me up in her little yellow truck. And her little yellow truck that if you've ever seen the movie Toy Story, and there's that yellow Toyota, I think it's yellow, it's got a camper shell on it, that's exactly like my grandpa's truck. Except in my grandpa's truck, you always had to share the front seat with 2 or 3 dogs. So wherever you went to, you would show up with dog hair and the smell of a dog who had licked you the entire trip. But I didn't know these people at Paradise Valley Church from Adam. So on that first weekend, on that first Saturday night, what the Bible would call the first day, the evening and the morning, I showed up and there was Kenneth Cox. Some of you know him well. Ron Larson knows him. Kenneth Cox just passed away not too long ago. And there he was talking about a creator God who loved me, who had a plan for my life, even if nobody else had a plan for my life. And so that first day, Sunday, I woke up, and you can show the picture now of Lemon Grove. I woke up in Lemon Grove, California, and in other parts of San Diego, and I started to look at life differently. I started to look at life differently. Because my purpose in life, listen, my purpose in life before this encounter was this: don't get in trouble. Or versions of that. Don't get caught. That picture that I showed you earlier, that was a young boy who was stealing my mom's boyfriend's cigarettes. I didn't have to steal alcohol from my stepfather because my stepfather would take me out and he would put a pint in front of me and see how quickly I could down it at 14 years old. Broke free from the chains of bondage, right? But that first day of getting to know God, All of a sudden, I had no desire to steal a pack of Marlboro Reds. I had no desire to touch a drop of alcohol. Why? Because perhaps for the first time, maybe somebody did have a plan for me after all. Even if it felt like the world had no plan for me. Going on to Genesis chapter 1, verse 6 through 8. This was what I read on a Monday. Then God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." Thus God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day. You know how many times, you can show the picture of the wave. I've shared this with some of you. How many times I looked up at those stars. I looked up at the heavens. I had gone to the beach. I had swam the wave. And one of my greatest challenges were, before I knew Christ, there were good days. There were great days. This world, this earth that God has made, it is beautiful even in its imperfection. There's something about walking out of Sabbath school and you know the roads are dangerous because it's wet, but isn't it just feel like the air is a little bit crisper and cleaner after the rain? It's just an appreciation for it, more an appreciation for life. I love the rain, but I love the rain in California because there are some places that get rain 200 days a year. I don't love the rain that much. But there's something about the seasons, and we're going to read more scripture about the seasons. And before I knew God, there was that feeling of being grateful for this earth, be grateful for the sun, be grateful for the stars and the wind and the waves. My challenge was, I was being taught that it was all an accident, that there was no God who was orchestrating this whatsoever. And on that first day, and that second day, I started to see things a little bit differently. Now Tuesday rolled around for me. Genesis chapter 1, verse 9 through 13. I read this. Then God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Verse 11 through 13. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the third day. Now, I want you to show a picture of Valhalla High School for me, Kyle. This was where, in school, you can see off on the distance on the right, see a tree. I sat under that tree, in that grass, reading Genesis, reading the book of Matthew, reading a book called Can God Be Trusted? And starting to look up and say, is there a God I can talk to? Is there a God who wants to know me because I want to know? Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 through 19 goes on and says this. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth." And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. Verse 18 and 19. And to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day. You know, here in Los Angeles is an exhibit where Ray Bradbury, the famous author, it was an exhibit that was originally designed for the Smithsonian Institute. Now, this Ray Bradbury has never professed to be a Christian. But Ray Bradbury, the author, was in love with the creation that he looked around. He was amazed at what he saw. So when the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. came to Ray Bradbury and they said, we want you to do something about the stars and about the planets and about the sun, he was like a little kid in the candy store. And he started to do this exhibit about all of the wonderful wonders of creation, and he would say a number of how old the earth was, or say a number of how old the universe was, how old the Milky Way was, and the Smithsonian would come back and say, excuse me, sir, you have the wrong date. It's not that old, it's this old. So he'd go back and create again, and he would do more of this presentation. And Ray Bradbury was such a genius. If you want to know his genius, I've never been to Walt Disney World, but the Epcot Center in Walt Disney World in Florida has Ray Bradbury's signature all over, and it still stands today, even though Ray Bradbury died 8 years ago. Fahrenheit 451, the novel, is still one of the best-selling of all time, even though Ray Bradbury died 8 years ago. The man had a brilliant imagination, and here he was trying to help the Smithsonian Institute, and they kept coming back and correcting him. That's the wrong date, sir. You got the wrong this, you got the wrong that. And finally he said, wait a second, stop. He said, let me give you back your money. And they said, why, Mr. Bradbury? Why are you so offended? He said, because you're putting the children of the world to sleep. He said, the world is showing you. And then he said the word that cost him the project. He said, God is showing you. Oh, we don't talk about God here, Mr. Bradbury. He said, he's begging you to look at this earth and to witness and to celebrate everything that's here for our good. Do you know what a miracle it is that we're even here? And he said, you know what your problem is? You're giving information. He said, preach. We're here as human beings to witness and celebrate. Folks, this wasn't a Christian. And the Smithsonian said, you know what? Give us our money back. You'll have to take your project somewhere else. So from what I understand, over here somewhere near Griffith Park is Ray Bradbury's work, where he finally found somebody who would help him in witnessing and celebrating all of the beauty around us. I'm here to tell you today that when I look at our schools, when I look at our churches, but more importantly, when I look in the mirror as a dad and I look in the mirror, or we look at ourselves as parents, one of the things we have to understand is until we are excited about God and we are excited about life, there is no way our children are going to be excited about God and excited about life. All I had growing up before I met God was rules. Rules do not bring life. They can guide, they can keep us safe, they do not bring life. But the God who in the midst of the chaos brought the order, in the midst of the darkness brought light. He can bring order to our lives, but more importantly, he can bring life to our lives. And he could bring life to our young people. So I'm here to tell you something today. I am tired in 2020 of hearing how millennials cannot and are not worth much because they're this or they're that. Do you know that every single generation has had that said about them, including, I almost guarantee, yours? When I was in high school, we were called Generation X. You can't get them to do anything. They won't commit to anything. They're hopeless. They're the lost generation. Then before that, it was probably your generation in the 60s with the Woodstock. And before that, you guys were the Elvis generation. And before that, when my grandma was a teenager, it was the Roaring 20s. Every generation is hopeless when it comes to youth. You will never read those words in Scripture. What you will read in Scripture is an invitation from God. The invitation from the preacher in Ecclesiastes, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Next week, I pray that every single person comes here to our youth and young adult service, because the world is going on social media and criticizing this generation, this political party, criticizing this political party. What we need today is life. What we need today is to show that God hasn't given up on anybody, any generation, any person, from any background. If God was going to give up on anybody, I would have been toast a long time ago. Genesis tells us that out of nothing, God created all that you and I are experiencing here today. Everything. I'm afraid, anybody got a cell phone I can borrow just for a second? I promise I won't turn it on and look at your messages. I am afraid that with all this technology, do you know that one of these cell phones has as much information as 6 of those huge IBM computers back in the early 1980s? It's all right here. Within years, you will be able, you already can do in little versions, you'll be able to make your own movies, you'll be able to make your own music videos, you'll be able to do it all. You'll be able to go to a different, you can already go to a different country and just talk into it and it will translate it. But here is the thing. This technology, it is a gift from God. It is not God. And what we're doing now is instead of going to a concert and enjoying it, I mean, you got the best view of the house. Here's how we're enjoying concerts now. Wow. This Monday night, they'll finally have a memorial service for Kobe and Gigi. Moving service, best seat in the house, best view to soak it all in, and everybody's going to be right there. Folks, this is a gift from God. It is not God himself. And what I'm afraid this does is it takes away, don't worry, I'll give it back, John Lemos. It takes away our appreciation of the little things. There's no downtime. Nowadays, boredom is almost a crime. You're bored? Oh, here, play a game. Let this entertain you. Let this read you. And folks, I'm not talking about the kids. I'm talking about the adults. And let me tell you, I get it. I get it. My wife will tell you, when I make a post, posting something the church has done, they know what they're doing. They know how to get you hooked and look at something else and look at another article and the thing that you just posted. They'll send you an advertiser that's tying to the thing that you just posted. They know what they're doing. My question to you today is, do the children of God know what they're doing? Do we know when it's time to put it aside? Say enough. Need a break. It's not all there is to life. The reason why I push so much for the Pathfinders, the reason why I push so much, there you go. See, I promise you I'd give it back. I checked out on eBay. I couldn't get a good price for it, so you're good. The reason why I push so much for what Frank and Yvonne and Smith are doing with our Pathfinders is because in a world where kids need belonging, in a world that is filled with technology, our kids need a break to see the majesty and the handiwork of the God who created it all. And not just the stars, not just the camping. We'll see a little bit later, the people too. God has done all of these amazing things, and there is nothing that can duplicate what he does. So when I read here, go back to the picture of Valhalla if you can, Kyle. When we read here about every single thing that God created, in terms of the vegetables and the things from the ground, I'm telling you right now, as a young boy, I would get out my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or my turkey sandwich before I found the Adventist bookstore, and then I found the tofurkey sandwich, okay, all right? But I enjoyed both of them, but I would sit out there. There was a new appreciation of everything in my life. Because see, before, everything was just, I was a machine. I was a machine here to produce good grades. Why? So I could, after I get done with school, get a good job. Why? So I can, after that, perhaps get married. Why? So perhaps after that I could have a few kids. Why? After that, so I could perhaps at that good job retire. Why? So someday I could die and have people say nice things at a funeral service for me. Folks, that's not going to fire people up. Funerals don't fire people up. And all of the success in this life, this is not a downer. This is the sobering reality. Monday in the Staples Center, there will be millions around the world tuning in to a man who, I'm telling you, Kobe Bryant pushed his body beyond its limits. I can remember tuning in to that last night. Kobe was well beyond his prime, playing one more game against the Utah Jazz, and somebody joked with him, hey, maybe go out and get 40 points tonight, and they all laughed. Somebody else joked, hey, maybe go out and get 50 points tonight, and they all joked and they all laughed. Kobe went out and got 60 points when his body was beyond its peak. Do you know how hard that is to do in an NBA basketball game? And his second career was about to be better than his first, and he went out and he won an Oscar. He accumulated $500 million in net worth. And one mistake from a pilot. It is looking like one mistake. If he had gone 100 feet higher through the clouds, they would have made it 100 feet more. That is 12 seconds. Had the pilot kept going 12 seconds, 9 people would be alive. This is not blaming it on the pilot. This is telling you how fragile life really is. And wherever you are today, however hard you feel like you have it, there is a man worth $500 million who is no more, who would give all $500 million of those net dollars to be where you are at today, to have one more day to hug his children, one more day to tell his wife, one more day to tell his friends how much he loves them. He would give it all. And you and I are sitting here with the most precious gift that there is, the gift that God decided to create us, that God decided to wake us up this morning, and no teacher, no counselor, no enemy, no bully, no presidential candidate on the right or the left can keep you from what God has called you to do. They cannot do it. Why? Because in the beginning, God. It doesn't say in the beginning Bernie. It doesn't say in the beginning Donald. It doesn't say in the beginning Mike. It says in the beginning God. And what I told you about earlier was this idea that we just need to tear off the shackles of oppression, and that will set us free. And what I told you about earlier was my concern when we look back at history. And we want to just take George Washington and Lincoln and let's just clump them together. Let's just have a President's Day. Let's just celebrate all the presidents. You know what you do when you clump everything together and let's just celebrate it all? You know what you wind up doing? You wind up celebrating none of it. It's why T.D. Jakes, as much as I respect him, when he says, every day's my Sabbath, Monday's my Sabbath, Sunday's my Sabbath, Tuesday's my Sabbath, every day that I walk with my Lord is my Sabbath. What you do when you clump everything together and you say everything is special, what you do is you say nothing is special. And my Sabbath sermon is coming in a few weeks, but I'm here to tell you today that there is a reason why the enemy hates two institutions more than any other. He hates marriage and he hates the Sabbath. Why? Because they are both a reminder that it all starts with God. It all starts with God. The reason why we have 365 days, you know, about the planet and the rotation, all of that. Why we have 24 hours in a day, you know why, you scientists. Come on, you know why. Why do we have 7 days in a week? It is nothing scientific, folks. It is Scripture. It is in the beginning, God. So I don't care where you are at today. I don't care where you are at last week. I don't care where you've been at in this season. Every morning when you wake up is a fresh start to begin again and say, today is the day of salvation, as it tells us in Hebrews, and in the beginning God. So God, today is my new beginning with you. Every day is that opportunity. His mercies are new every single morning. Going on in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, as we near the close here. Day 5, then God said, let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. Verse 23. So the evening and the morning were the 5th day. You want to know one of the ways, the book of Acts, Paul says, God has been filling your heart with food and gladness. He was speaking to a group of people who didn't even know who God was. You know one of the ways that God would touch my life before I knew him? How many of you here have family pets and love your family pet? Anybody here have a family pet? Show a picture of a family pet who looked very much like one I had back at this time. Let's see if we have that picture. Well, we have a picture of the bird, yeah. That bird is named Otis. This little girl, her name is Hayed. This was when I started Bible studies with her. I baptized her on August 26, 2017. That was my last Sabbath at South Bay. Then I took a week break, and then I started Fullerton immediately after. But I was doing Bible studies with Hayed and her brother Jose, and they had a bird named Otis, and I had to take a picture of Otis because Otis reminded me of my little bird that I had. When I first became a Christian, we had this little bird in the house that every time I came home, this little bird was so excited to see me, and I had family pets that I loved before, but even the birds could tell in my life, even the animals could tell in my life that I had a spring in my step and a song in my heart, and I loved that little bird. Challenge with family pets is they don't last forever. Otis is still alive. My little bird didn't make it and had a little drowning accident one time, and my heart was broken, sad. And one of the questions I always had before I was a Christian was, if this whole thing is survival of the fittest and it doesn't really matter, then why on earth am I crying over this family cat or family bird or family dog? If it's all about Darwinism and just surviving, I'd just say, well, wasn't strong enough to make it, toss you out, move on to the next one. Something deeper, isn't there? Now fast forward to today. There's Vanity. This is my granddaughter doggy, okay? All right? She is posing for the camera. She always has to come out on the porch and show all the neighbor dogs who is the queen of the neighborhood, okay? But here's really Vanity. Show the next picture of Vanity. This is really what she's like. Just a sweet, humble, lovable dog. Now she's half pit, and my wife always tries to say, yeah, but she's half pit. So I'm like, sweetheart, when she sees a stranger, she is all pit, okay? She is all pit. And pray for us, because we might have, our granddaughter doggy might be leaving us this Monday to go back to her mama, where we might try to bribe the mama and get her to stay a little bit longer. We'll see. But God gives us so many good things, and I'm here to tell you today, He even thought up your family pets. That's what a good God is. That's what a cool God is. He didn't need to do that. He could have said, you have your salvation, be happy with it. He gives us all these little things that bring so much joy to our life. Going on in Genesis chapter 1, wrapping up with verse 24 through 31, it says this on day 6. Then God said, let the earth bring forth a living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, each according to its kind, and it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the ground, the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Now, I just want to pause right here. I was asked a couple of weeks ago, Pastor Darren, with all this stuff that's going on in the world today, all the changes and everything, are you homophobic? I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. When I was at Hoover High School, I had a student who, just going to tell it straight, from the waist down was a male. From the waist up was a female, physically. Not just the inward feelings, physically. And I was so grateful because we had staff who were non-Christian. The ones who didn't even believe in God were flipping out over this. And some of the Christians were flipping out over this. But you know who didn't flip out over this? I was at a public school. We had a nurse who was an Adventist. She was as calm as can be. She was as calm as can be. People were like, what are we going to do with her? Or him, or whatever we call her, they would say. She said, we're going to treat this person like a human being, and we're going to help them in whatever transition they choose. And when that student graduated from Hoover High School, turned 18, went through the transition, decided to be a girl, and she was a very more masculine girl, but she was a girl. That's what she wanted to be. And we supported her, and we loved her, and we accepted her. But I need to tell you something that is quite different than me seeing classes when I visited Portland. I love Portland. I love the bumper sticker, keep Portland weird. I love weird. I love different color hair, all that kind of stuff. What I'm not for and not so excited is when I see classes for parents of 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds starting to suggest that these poor children are being oppressed by having to choose between being a male and a female. Remember what I told you earlier. This idea, let's break the shackles of church. Let's break the shackles of bondage. Let's break the shackles of all this. Young people, I'm here to tell you, I don't care who you are, and I don't care what you're going through. I'm here to tell you there is a wave right now of trying to turn your life into politics. I would strongly encourage you, if any of you ever feel like you need to talk to me, you have a safe place with me. But I would strongly encourage you, you don't have to go on Facebook and tell the whole world. Have the conversation with God. Have the conversation with me. Have the conversation with a good therapist. And church, I'm here to tell you, you're going to have situations at work, and your kids are going to have situations at work where if you do not learn simply how to be kind and how to be respectful, you are going to be going against the law of the land. Now, I am against the law of the land, thinking it could kick these doors open and tell me what I am and am not going to preach about. I will tell you that every day of the week and twice on Sabbath. But I'm going to tell you something else. The authority and the power that Jesus Christ gives you and I is not the authority and power to go around acting like a jerk at the workplace or at school and picking on people who have not chosen what they're struggling with. We need to find a balance, and we need to find a middle way. And that middle way is called following Jesus. Can I get an amen on that? These issues are going to become hot button issues from now to November, hotter than you've ever seen them. Remember this, in the beginning, God. He is the author and finisher of this life. He is the author and finisher of our faith. And nowhere will you see Jesus telling us to trample over other people to get our truth to the front. You will see Jesus say, "Come, follow me." And you'll see Jesus telling us to stand up and speak for him. But always in the spirit of love. Going on to the next verses. Verse 28, then God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God said, "See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food." And it was so. Then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Show again, if you can, Kyle, the picture of Lemon Grove. So here I am in this city. I just gone through a week. Sunday at home, Monday through Friday at school, and now I came home to that first sundown where I realized there was something special going on. See, in the past, I just worked. I studied 7 days a week, just went through the routine. You know, we always complain about Sabbath. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. This is what I was talking about when it comes to Ray Bradbury. We need to preach. We need to witness and celebrate. The truth is, you get to enjoy a Sabbath with the Lord your God. You get to. It's not what you can't do, it's what you can do. And I'm telling you, as one who the first 14 years of my life was running on that hamster wheel as fast as he could, there was nothing like saying, "Mom, Dad, I love you, but I'm not going to do that chore on God's Sabbath." You want to know something? My chores got done twice as well and twice as quickly. You want to know what else? My grades went up almost overnight. Why? Because I realized I wasn't a machine just here to produce and stay out of trouble. I was here for a purpose, God's purpose in my life. I was finding rest in the knowledge that God had made this beautiful world for me. But most importantly, I was finding rest in knowing that in all these things in nature, I and you were the crown of creation. And God made me so that he could enjoy. That's a different concept, people. It's a different way of looking at life. Finally, in the next pictures, you can show the one with a church. First Sabbath at church. You can show the next picture after that. Coming home to Lemon Grove, taking a walk. You'll hear about all that in my Sabbath sermon. And then, let's see, do you have a picture of a waterfall? Green Valley Falls in San Diego. Where I went and I took my two buddies on spring break from Valhalla High School. Both of them were Catholic. And I decided I was going to treat them to a trip to Green Valley Falls. And we went out there. We had such a great time. We got chased by skunks. I'll tell you that story again sometime. And I made sure I gave them my Pope speech. I talked to them about the Pope and warned them about the Pope. He was a good little Adventist boy and all that good stuff. But what I did at the end of that week at Green Valley Falls with my two buddies, I was able on the last night of camping to look up to the stars and thank God finally for this beautiful life he had given me. Because I'd had good moments before I knew the Lord. I just never knew who to look up to and thank. So I'm here to tell all the young people in high school, young people in their 80s, All of you who are young at heart, I'm here to tell you this today. The world wants humans to become more and more detached from their Creator. The world wants its humans to become more and more like machines. God has given us this first book, His Holy Scriptures. But I'm telling you today, you have a divine permission, a divine letter from God giving you the day off. Whether it's sprinkling outside, whether it's sunny outside, step outside, feel the rain or feel the sun, see a tree in the backyard, go take a hike, go home and love your pets. Whatever you do, my invitation for you today is to slow down, to find some rest in nature. God made all of this for you and for me. And of all the people who should be taking care of this planet and loving this planet and the creatures in this planet and enjoying this planet, skiing on this planet, three-wheeling on this planet, whatever you do, it should be Seventh-day Adventist Christians who know who their Creator is and know their purpose for living and being here in His world. God bless you.